Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to go ahead and get started on lesson 4 of unit 1. So lesson 4 is essentials of experimental design. Okay, so we're going to get into like more different ways that we can design an experiment such that we kind of like eliminate as many factors that are affecting the experiment. Okay, so an experiment manipulates factor levels to create treatments, randomly assigns experimental units to these treatment levels, and then compares the response of the subject groups across the treatment levels. The experimental units may have been collected through a random sample or by volunteers. And the key to an experiment is that the random assignment to the treatments makes us see if there is a cause and effect relationship between the treatment and the response. So something that I want you to note real quick though is that an observational study only tells you a correlation between will only give you a correlation between the results and the experiment, while as an experiment that has treatments will tell you the causation. Okay, and we'll go more into details about this in just a bit. Okay, so the principle of a experimental design is that you have controls. So you control the aspects of the experiment that we know may have an effect on the response, but that are not the factors of being studied. So we but are not the factors being studied. Meaning you try to eliminate things, you try to control the things that are gonna affect it, but these controls, you're not changing these controls so that they're treatments for the experimental units. Random assignment of the subject to treatments to even out effects that we cannot control. Okay. So for example, if you were doing you're doing a experiment on a diet pill, right? And you want to see if this diet pill was affecting someone's heart rate. One of the controls that sometimes we can't one of the factors that we sometimes can't control is someone's weight, and thus we try to do random assignments such that the groups are evenly spread out and that one group doesn't have like all the overweight people and one group doesn't have all the underweight people. We want an even amount. Replicate over as many subjects as possible. Okay, and block to reduce the effects of identifiable attributes of the subjects that cannot be controlled. And we'll get more into what blocking is in just a bit. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go over some vocabulary terms. Okay. So experimental units are individuals whom an experiment is performed on. Okay. So these are sometimes called subjects or participants. Okay. Factors are variables whose levels are changed. Okay, so this could be like the amount of exercise someone does. So the exercise is the factors, the amount is the levels. So like 30 minutes is a level, 50 minutes is a level, so on and so forth. Okay, a level is, like I just said, specific value of factor. Okay, Treatments is the different levels given. Response is basically the variable whose values are compared with one another. Basically, it's the results that we get. Okay. Confounding is when a factor is associated with another. And cannot be separated. Okay. So another way to explain this is that confounding factors means that there are other things that vary. For example, you want to take a test on a device, but you only required one. So you want to make a test on a medical device, right? But you only require one group to stay hydrated, and the other group, they can do whatever they want. So you don't know if this device is working because people are drinking water or because they're not drinking water. Kind of like that. And we'll go over an example once we start school to show more of what confounding variables mean, so that you can have a better understanding of it. Okay. Next, we're going to go over control group, and this is the basically the baseline group. Okay, a group that doesn't get any treatments or whatever. Placebo is a treatment without any effects, right? So that could be like the group that basically is a group that's not getting any treatment, and it shouldn't affect them in any way. Placebo effect, though, is the trend, or sorry, it's not the trend, it's the tendency of humans to show a response when given placebo. Okay, so it's this idea that they are being affected even though they weren't really given the treatment. Blinding means that individual doesn't know how subjects were assigned. Single blind means it's the same thing, so it's one class of people who doesn't know. And in double blind is that both classes. Both classes don't know. So that could be like, if you have two classes of people who influence the outcomes, right? Influencing meaning that can influence the results, like the subject, treatment, and administrators. A single blind would be that one of these people don't know how the treatments were assigned, and then the other class of people is those that evaluates the groups, so a judge or a physician. So if it's double blind, both of these groups doesn't know how the treatments were assigned. If it's a single blind, either one of these classes don't know how the treatments were assigned. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to the next page. So we have a model problem that says you want to test to see if a special diet, exercising regularly, or a combination of both is more effective in women over the age of 50 that want to lose weight. You have a random sample of 40 women over the age of 50 for your study. Identify the following key terms in this situation. So our experimental units, meaning the people that are going to get the treatments, are 40 women over the age of 50. Okay. The response variable, right, is going to be what the results we're looking for is weight loss. Okay. So here we get into the factors and the levels. So again, the factors are the variable whose levels are being changed, right? So what is it that we're doing to these people? So for the factors, we got diet and we got exercise. So these are two treatments, okay? And then for the diet, the levels for these diets is that they're either going to be on a special diet or none. And for the exercise, it's going to be regular exercise or none. Okay, so these are the levels. Okay. So these are the combinations of treatment that we're going to be given to these people. Okay. So for the treatment groups, right, we're going to have, and this is really easy. You basically just go down the tree, right? So you're going to have diet, a special diet, and regular exercise, a special diet, and no exercise. So that's 1. This is 2. 3 would be no diet and regular exercise. 4 would be no diet and no exercise. And lastly, we would have a control group. Okay? And this control group is basically, so bit of a confusion. The control group is this right here. Because they're not getting any treatment, the no diet and no exercise is the control group. Okay. So how have we controlled potential confounding variables? So remember, confounding variables means that it's a factor that we can't change or separate from the experiment, but it has a effect on the experiment, okay? So we did this by having a control group, in which nothing is changed from their regular diet and exercise. Okay. And then what we also did was we combined different levels and factors. Different levels of each factor. Is it possible to include blinding in our study? Explain how we could do so. Yes. So for this one, we definitely can have a blinding, except it would only be for a single blind. So it would be a single blind in which physicians would not know which experimental group was assigned to each participant. Okay. By not telling them which group they were placed in, the person that interprets the results just has to look at the results and not make any conclusion with the experimental treatments. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to go to the next page, which has a check for my understanding. So, same as how we've done before, I want you to go ahead and pause this video, go through the problem, and then play the video again so that you can check your work. Okay, so researchers want to see if osteoporosis was more common in women than in men. So osteoporosis is when your bones start to break down and have holes in it. And a lot of the reasons why for this is because, you don't have enough calcium. So make sure you get a lot of calcium at the earlier age so you can prevent this. At a local clinic, they randomly select 25 men aged 60 to 69 and 25 women aged 70 to 79 and recorded their bone density. Half of the men and half of the women were randomly assigned to a supplement meant to help maintain bone density. The other subjects received a placebo. After 6 months, bone density was recorded again for all 45 participants and compared to their original bone density. So the experimental groups was 20 men aged 60 to 69 and 25 women aged 70 to 79. Okay, the response variable, what we're measuring is the bone density. Okay, factors and levels. All right, so the factor is the supplement. So this is the factor. And then the level is given or not. So the not would be our placebo. And this is the control group. Okay. So the the treatment groups would be the men with supplement, men with placebo. Same thing for the women with supplement, women with placebo. And remember that those that are getting the placebo are the control groups. Okay. Discuss any problems you see with the design of this experiment. So one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing right now is the ages. So the age of women and men are different, and bone density is affected by age. So at different age groups, bone density. So different age groups, bone density varies. Okay. So more about blinding. So we talked about this before. Blinding is when, classes don't know how treatment groups were assigned. So for this one, it says some people who raise greyhounds give dogs large doses of vitamin C in belief that the dogs will run faster. You have a random sample of 15 greyhounds and 2 vitamin C supplies, 250 milligrams and 500. Explain how you can incorporate blinding into the experiment. Okay, so what you would do is first you would have 3 groups. Okay, 5 dogs. 5 dogs get 250 milligram. 5 get 500 milligrams, and 5 is the placebo. Okay, and the placebo would mean that they don't get any of the supplement. Blinding occurs when the judges will not know who got vitamin C or not. Okay, and those watching the race also would not know. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next page. We're almost done with lesson 4. So here we talk about we've been talking about experiments up until this point, where random assignments had occurred and people were given treatment groups. We're now going to talk about observational studies. So a study that has been conducted without random assignments to treatment groups is called an observational study. In an observational study, we will discuss the variables of the study, called explanatory and response. However, the data collected can determine whether there is a correlation between the 2 variables, but we cannot conclude a cause and effect relationship without random assignments to treatment groups. So remember when I said before, observational studies give us a correlation. Experiments with treatments gives us the causation. So here's an example. This is a free response question from the AP Stats 2000 test, and it's number 4 on that free response. Baby walkers are seats hanging from frames that allow babies to sit upright with their legs dangling and feet touching the floor. Walkers have wheels on their legs that allow the infant to propel the walker around the house long before he or she can walk or even crawl. Typically, babies use walkers between the ages of 4 months and 11 months. Because most walkers have tray tables in front that block babies' views of their feet, child psychologists have begun to question whether walkers affect infant cognitive development. One study compared mental skills of a random sample of those who use walkers with a random sample of those who never use walkers. Mental skills averaged 113 for 54 babies who used the walkers with a standard deviation of 12, and 123 for 55 babies who did not use walkers with a standard deviation of 15. I identified the explanatory and response variables in this study. So the explanatory variables basically kind of like, we can think of it as a way as the different treatment groups, so the different groups. So it would be those who use a walker, and those who do not use a walker. Okay. And then the response variable, what we're measuring is the mental skills. Okay. Suppose that a study using this design found a statistically significant results. Would it be reasonable to conclude that using a walker causes a change in mean mental skill score? No, because no random assignment was given. Because no random assignment was given. This is an observational study which means there is a correlation but not a causation. Okay? So that is that is lesson 4. Okay? So lesson 5 will be the next thing that we're going to go over.